Hey folks, welcome into the News 12 Now desk. Thanks for joining us here. 10:30 on our Tuesday morning. Joined by Hallie Turner this morning. We are taking another deep dive. So if you're not brushed up on what this is, we've done this before. It's been a little while though. We had Meredith Anderson on last week talking about the latest I-Team investigation. So we're going to bring reporters up here just to talk about some of the big stories we've got going on, some of the big talking points we've got going, because it's hard to condense everything into a shorter form piece just for our newscast. So these are going to be a little bit more extended looks at some of our big stories. So one of the big ones Hallie's been following here lately has been the Jamilla Smith case. She's a Aiken County mother who's been missing for about 2 months now. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a couple pieces that Hallie's done over the last couple months and then kind of take us through the investigation, where we stand now, key players and points involved. So we'll start off with the very first, or one of the first stories Hallie did on this a couple months ago when we first heard about this woman who had gone missing.
Daniel Harmon may be a stranger to you, but to law enforcement, he's a familiar face. He was charged with obstruction after a fight with his girlfriend, who's now missing, broke out at the Richmond County Fair in October. She was charged too. Wednesday, investigators spent most of the morning off Old Jackson Highway, where they believe Harmon kidnapped 30-year-old Jamilla Smith. She was last seen on this driveway. We saw more than 5 unmarked Aiken County vehicles, with investigators pulling items from the home and retracking the couple's every step. But we also tracked the couple's steps and found, in addition to that fair charge, deputies in Aiken County have had run-ins with Harmon more than 30 times over the span of a decade. His charges range from traffic violation to drug possession and neglect of children. In 2015, he pled guilty to simple battery family violence for pushing a woman in the forehead. In 2016, he was the driver in a hit-and-run, spending 5 years on probation with a hefty fine. Records show he's also faced a judge in Augusta for more than 20 different charges across state lines. In 2012, he shot a man, but the aggravated assault charge was later reduced to reckless conduct.
Okay, so there you go. That was very early in this whole thing. Hallie was out there the first day. So Hallie, take us through the beginning of how we got here. How did this come across your desk? And then you went out there. Take us through what you saw, what you heard on day one there.
Yeah, well, I actually was in an investigative training in Charlotte when I heard about this. We got a tip that she had been missing, and what was really strange to me was that while every missing person's case is different, this kind of fell along the same lines of Crystal Anderson, who went missing back in August of 2022. She fell under the same lines as Jamilla. You know, was a mom, had children, was young, last seen with the boyfriend, you know, all of this stuff. And so things just weren't adding up, and I just decided to come on back early. The next day I jumped straight on this case, and when I got out to the scene, it had been a couple of days since Jamilla had been reported missing, and investigators were still out there and they were on the scene. You can see them looking for stuff right now. And so I knew that this was something that wasn't going to be, you know, it was going to take time, like every investigation does. So we jumped on that. I'd spoken with her mom on the phone. They did not live in the state of South Carolina, so they were traveling to get here, trying to make sense of this all and be there for Jamilla's children.
So let's get through we've got the two players here. We've got Daniel Harmon, and we've got Jamilla Smith. So take us through their relationship a little bit. And there was a phone call that the last time she was heard from. Take us through what we heard in that.
So according to the family and an incident report, there had been some history of some domestic violence. You know, like every couple, people have their fights, but incident reports kind of show towards the end of the year of 2023, things really started ramping up here. And so, that's Captain Abdullah speaking right there. But anyways, so they, I'm losing my train of thought, I'm blanking. They kind of had gone through the motions, but a phone call was made that night. Jamilla, they'd gone on a trip together, and Jamilla told law enforcement that there were some things going on, and the incident report said that he actually, she told people that he had thrown her phone out of the window. But she called and said he had shown up to her home. She was running down the street of Old Jackson Highway, the road of Old Jackson Highway, and that's when everything kind of changed. They heard a car horn honking, him screaming at her to get in the car, and that's all we knew at the time. And everything kind of went quiet after that. They showed up out there. I've spoken with Captain Abdullah with the Aiken County Sheriff's Office, and they said they were there, they responded, they sent units, and they could not make contact with Jamilla or Daniel.
Yeah, and so now the family has gone ahead and gotten a private investigator. That's the next story that we're going to take a look at here. But before we do, why did they feel it important to get a private investigator versus just having the sheriff's office look into it?
Well, it just kind of had struck them as something was odd and it was off, and they decided to reach out to Chandra Cleveland, and Investigator Cleveland has been on the Crystal Anderson case, so they knew that she has a good repertoire with missing women, missing black women especially, and they called on her, and she immediately jumped all in, hands on deck.
All right, so that's the next one we're going to take a look at here. You talked to the private investigator in this one, so there we go.
It's been nearly a month since Jamilla Smith vanished from her home right here off Old Jackson Highway. Private investigator Chandra Cleveland says the Smith family has been patiently waiting on a call that would bring comfort. But when the phone rang 2 days before Christmas,
silence. It was silence for a while.
On the other line, Aiken County informed the family they have enough evidence to charge Millie's ex-boyfriend Daniel Harmon with her murder. Cleveland says her mother, Tina, unable to form words, remains in shock.
This is going to be the hardest time she ever had to deal with. And, Millie's children are asking for her.
Life as anyone knew it forever changed.
Even harder when kids have to be split up and they're used to being with their mom. They're used to getting things all together and being together. And now they have been separated because of an act of crime such as this murder.
While investigators are not sure where her body could be, Cleveland says she does know one thing.
Even the case is not closed. I don't want anybody to think by any stretch of imagination the case is closed. So if you find out anything or you hear anything, please reach out to me. Let me know what you have so we can follow up.
There you go, hearing from the private investigator again. Keep doing that. And I think one thing that sticks out to me there is the family's having a hard time even talking to you about this, not necessarily because of a lack of trust or belief or anything, just because this is such a difficult situation. So you're just hearing things sort of secondhand through a private investigator, but still, what is the family feeling right now, and what are you hearing through Investigator Cleveland?
They're hurt. They want to know where their daughter is. They want to find her body. They just want that closure. I mean, imagine going through Christmas, just a couple of days before Christmas, Christmas Eve, Daniel was charged with murder. And so just imagine, you're getting hope. You're finally, okay, she's missing. We're going to have that hope. And then you spend all of your Christmas knowing that Daniel, her boyfriend, has got a murder charge now. So, I mean, it's hard. I can't even imagine what they were going through, but now their sole focus is finding her body, and they're asking for help.
And it's something that we talked about with Crystal Anderson's case too, and maybe we can touch on this on just the broader scale a little bit. Both of these cases have young kids involved, and that is such a difficult thing. We heard from Crystal's sister a couple months ago, year ago, whatever it was now, about how she's trying to explain this thing to kids. So it really, in both cases, what are you hearing just about how the kids are handling this?
It's hard. I mean, even with Crystal Anderson's youngest daughter, imagine being young and not knowing where your mom is. She disappears one day. You're used to seeing her every single day. Now she's been gone for years. Same thing with Jamilla's children. They're used to their mom being there every single day, and now she's not. What do you tell them? They don't comprehend it the way you and I would. So it's hard. It's very hard. So I don't know that Jamilla's children know yet. That is up to their parent, Jamilla's family's disclosure to tell them, but I just know that it's been very hard on their family.
Yeah, let's keep the family theme going here. Where are they at right now with all this? Obviously, they've hired the private investigator. They just want their daughter. This has been an emotional whirlwind for them. So where are her parents at in all this right now?
They're kind of stuck in that unknown, the waiting. We've got to call, the sheriff's office released the full thing in the 911 call. We know now that they say that Daniel actually hit Jamilla with his car. They have enough evidence to believe that she is dead. So now it's just trying to process all of that, but how's she dead and there's no body? They haven't been able to find it yet. So they want that closure to be able to move forward, to move past this. It's not something that you ever get over. It's not, grief is something that they are dealing with every single day. And what Crystal's family has said is you learn how to pick it up piece by piece, but you bring it back together. While every case is different, you still have 2 missing women and no bodies at all.
Yeah, and Aiken County too, which is interesting. And in this next one here, we're going to hear from the sheriff's office. But before this happened, we had heard from her family saying some things about how they felt the investigation was going. So why did the sheriff's office feel like they wanted to sit down with you and talk this thing out a little bit?
Well, it's important to understand how an investigation works, and oftentimes we think sometimes if we watch crime shows or whatever, everything is solved by the end of that show. But when it comes to electronic data or it comes to things that they are looking for in these cases, it's not as easily solved, and it doesn't happen that quickly. You've got to go through processes with the judge and all of that, and you don't just get that information back. You don't just get approved day in and day out. So they want everyone to know that just because there have been charges, just because they have someone behind bars, and they have enough evidence to believe Jamilla's dead, the case is far from over. They're still gathering that evidence, and it would be really hurtful to their case if they just said, hey, look, here's my file, let's open it up. Why don't you look at everything and let's release it all at once? They just can't do that, and it'll hurt everything. So they have one chance to get it right, and that was Captain Abdullah's point of our entire interview was one time. That's all they have. They have one shot.
And so in this one, we are going to hear from Captain Eric Abdullah with the Aiken County Sheriff's Office. This, I believe, was the first time we heard from them in this investigation.
No, we've heard from them before,
okay.
But he went a little more into depth about how they investigate cases like this.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and listen to this one, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
When it comes to investigating murders like the one of 30-year-old Jamilla Smith,
every case is going to be different from one another, regardless of similarities to other cases. It does take a tremendous amount of resources to investigate murder cases.
Captain Eric Abdullah with the Aiken County Sheriff's Office says,
You have to ensure that we get it right the first time.
an arrest is the first piece to the puzzle.
One thing we'd like people to understand that is when we make an arrest, the investigation doesn't stop. And that goes with continuing to follow up on leads. Evidence has to be looked at, analyzed.
Next comes the data. In Jamilla's case, they're waiting on things like cell phone records that take a long time to come back.
Electronic data is not easily obtained, as you will see on an edited show. It takes a tremendous amount of time and resources to where you have to submit your affidavits for a probable cause or why you need this information, and have the circuit court judge sign off on it and submit it to those locations in order to get that information back. They don't just automatically turn around and give it to you.
Oftentimes, it does produce answers, just not ones they can release right away.
Can't release evidence. We can't just open up our investigative file and like, here you go. We have some sensitive information in there to include our timeline that we're building, analyzing electronic data, all the locations that we've searched and documentation from that. All those things are essential to building a case. Releasing that information prematurely could jeopardize the success for the prosecution in this case.
In Aiken, Hallie Turner, on your side.
Captain Abdullah there with the Sheriff's Office. And I think an important thing to note there is he says at the end, releasing the information could jeopardize things. So it may not seem like they are quote unquote doing enough or trying hard enough, but they may have things that they just can't talk about yet because it jeopardizes the information. I mean, think about if you've got somebody on the run, you don't want to plaster their face all over when you're getting close to them, because then they might know and run. So just something along those lines too, I think is important to note. And this thing is far from over for the Sheriff's Office, far from over for the family, and far from over from you as well. We know you'll keep looking into this too.
Absolutely.
So there you go, folks. We will go ahead and we'll wrap things up right there, unless you had anything else you wanted to add to it.
That's all I got.
Good deal. So Hallie Turner joining us this morning on the News 12 Now desk. We appreciate the time here, and we know, again, there is more to this story that we'll get out. And as soon as we get the information, we will, of course, put it out to you guys. So that's going to do it for this deep dive. We'll be back tomorrow for another episode, and then later on this morning, we'll have some First Alert Weather Extra with Mikkel and Emily. Thanks for tuning in.